Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of SuperFantaFi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest Doctor Who episode, Doctor Who: The Star Beast. Great episode slash special. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So I'm curious how many people are watching this who might not have started with the Tenet seasons. I'm curious how many people start with one particular Doctor and actually go back. I've never been in that situation. I've not seen the original Doctor Who run. So my introduction, I always say this every time. I started with Eccleston as the Ninth Doctor, and I've kind of gone forward. I've never gone back. So I'm curious how many people have started with a Doctor, whether it's Tennant, whether it's Smith, whether it's Capaldi or Whittaker, and like went back. So that's what I'm so curious about. So like how many people might have just gone forward and never went back to Tennant and don't even know about him as a Doctor, or even Donna. I'd assume most people watching this are like Tennant's most likely their favorite Doctor. You assume he's a lot of people's favorite Doctor, mine being Matt Smith. But all the Doctors I've gotten to know over the years, I've loved every single one of them. I'm going on a tangent, but like it's just so interesting. Once again, it's like, here you are with this face again that even you don't understand why you have this face. Then like, oh, you park the TARDIS, and the first person you run into, I was like, the person carrying box. I was like, there's no way and lo and behold, it's Donna. And I love him just help because he wanted to help out. He saw it was Donna. He's like, nope. Put the box back and try to walk away. But she's like, really? Are you trying to be funny? Like, come on and help me. And then she's calling out to her daughter, Rose, which I'm like, for one, Donna having a daughter, I'm like, oh, that's super cool. That's super cute. That's super awesome. But also that name, which we'll talk about that later on, of how significant that is, just because of why the significance of that in that capacity. Because even the Doctor was like, wait, what? When he heard the name, he was almost looking around. He's like, no, it can't be. And obviously, like I said, they tie into it storyline wise, the name Rose, but I thought it was interesting because immediately I had thought, like, that's not supposed to be like some, like, Batman versus Superman joke. The thing people harp on the most. Like, I don't know if you call it the meme of the movie, but it's the whole Martha, why did you say that name? Which is funny to even using that as an example because, hey, when the Doctor had this face, who was his other companion during those adventures as the 10th Doctor? Oh, Martha. So it's interesting how that works. And I almost surprised he didn't make a joke about it. I was like, oh, do you have another kid named Martha? So that would have been interesting, but... And I also love that, and it seems like maybe this was by design, that apparently anytime something happens this kind of the extraordinary nature, Donna always happens to miss it. It's like literally a spaceship is crashing. Rose is like, Mom, there's a spaceship happening. And she's like, yeah, I might have missed it. Who cares? Like, I always got something more important going. Literally everyone else around was like, oh my God, do you see that? Which is so wild considering you're like, shouldn't eventually... But I guess that's also the nature of the show, this franchise or series, because I was about to say, like, everything that's happened on Earth, you would think eventually be like, especially on the Europe side of things, specifically on the London side of things, you would think that would kind of, but I guess it's like pockets around the world, and I guess you do have UNIT covering a lot of that up, so it just kind of, I guess, disappears from the general zeitgeist. But you'd expect, like, Earth would be more prepared, like, it wouldn't be that shocking anymore. I mean, a lot of people were like, oh my God, and then they were just like, yeah, sure, and kind of went on with their lives, but you would think that'd be the point, like, considering everything alien-related that's ever found itself on Earth on not just a small scale, on a massive scale. There have been worldwide incidents involving aliens, but there have also just been countrywide incidents that have, or continent-sized incidents that have affected, so it's always interesting. So I also love that, hey, he went to go to a taxi because he heard someone calling out Rose's name, and it ended up being Sean, who is Donna's husband, Rose's dad. So, and he's talking a little bit about Donna. We find out she gave away 166 mil, and it's like, wait, what? Why would she do it? It's like, yeah, we got enough to pay the bills. No, we got a house, but not enough to kind of keep paying it off. But the rest of the money she gave away to charity. And he's just like, it's like, oh, I love her and everything, but it's still just kind of like, oh, I can't believe she gave away that much money to charity. It's like, which is very sweet, because even the Doctor's like, why would she do that? It's like, oh, that is kind of very, very nice of her. And in his mind is probably like, oh, that's a very kind of Donna to do. But either way, he wants to go investigate the ship, which Unit's already there. He meets Shirley, who is familiar enough with the Doctor. I even love that she's like, I'm going to get a bonus just for meeting you. The sonic screwdriver being utilized in the way it is really interesting. Like the literal screens he's able to make and like look at, like, oh, interesting. Because normally I feel like you'd have to pull that up on some device or go back to the TARDIS and pull it up. But being able to just kind of straight up do it with the sonic screwdriver and utilize it the way, I mean, it's always been like one of the MacGuffins of this show, regardless. But it's just always interesting the way they've kind of revitalize it or just like find new ways to kind of enhance it and use it in different manners. But yeah, Shirley and the Doctor had that whole conversation. I even love that Shirley's coming at it from like, wait, you're not supposed to know about your future, which is so interesting and ironic considering the Doctor learned so much about their past previously. So it's like interesting to be like, oh, you're not supposed to know about your future. But it's like, well, no, those other faces of, you know, being the guy that's in the bow ties or a Scotsman or a woman. It's like, no, those weren't my futures. Like those were those are futures I ended up living, and now I'm back to this face. It's like, why? It's like, I have no idea. But for him, it's like, it all feels too coincidental. This face I had connected to Donna, who is like, I keep running into her now. Also, there's this alien ship that's landing at the same time. It's like the universe is too coincidental. It's like it's not like Donna's drawing them all in. She's a normal person, but it just feels like the universe is bringing everything around her, and he's scared because it's like, right, if she remembers me, she dies. So that ended up being a whole conversation. I made a video years ago talking about, like, to me, the saddest moment in Doctor Who history, which obviously is an exaggeration because I've never seen all of Doctor Who. But at the time, I talked about, you know, Amy and Rory's final episode because it was at that time. That shows you how long ago this was. This had to be like it was like 2012. Because I remember specifically where I was living when I recorded that video. But yeah, someone had brought up the Donna of it all. And at the time, I didn't think too much of it. I was like, oh yeah, this person. But because, like I said, I was a little more, it was a recency bias thing of like, yeah, like the Amy and Rory, I thought it was just sad. Because at least Donna got to live her life present day. Amy and Rory got sent somewhere else. I mean, yeah, they got to live their lives, but they got to be away. They were away from their family. Like the lives they had were kind of taken from them. So to me, I thought that was just kind of a sad goodbye because at least Donna was still alive, you know, so because I'm blanking on the Bill circumstance, but like every other companion, at least that we gotten to know over the course of the shows of this iteration of the Doctor from like I said, Eccleston on, this reboot continuation, like she's amongst a crowd who are okay. Like, she might not be able to remember the Doctor, but I think, to me, that's why I didn't think it was that bad. It's like, yeah, it sucks. Her memories are sealed. But I love that the episode dives into that. Like, the fact is she doesn't feel complete. She feels like something's missing. And she's like, I should be happy. I've got Sean. I've got you, Mom. I've got Granddad. I've got Rose. I should be happy. Yes, I'm kind of without a job right now. But, life is good. But I still feel like there's something missing. She's like, I want to turn and there should be someone there, but they're not. And, and that means for the past 15 years, she's been feeling that hole, like this emptiness. And that is a lot for someone to carry for the past, like, decade and a half, So I do appreciate the episode kind of putting that in perspective. Once again, we're also talking about, like I said, a video I recorded like 11 years ago. I was like, I was 20 at the time. So my perspective on that, like I said, it was also recency bias because the Amy and Rory thing had just happened when I recorded everything. So that's just kind of in my head and kind of revisiting the Donna of it all and kind of getting this perspective. My whole point is that it makes me realize the tragedy of it even more because I was like, oh, it sucked, but I didn't really at the time recognize what that really meant. And this episode really points out what that meant for Donna, like feeling like, yeah, she might have been able to live her life, but it always feels like there's something missing. Because even in Amy and Rory's circumstances, at the very least, they still had each other. So that's some silver lining where it's like they kind of felt complete in those regards, but Donna's been living these past 15 years feeling incomplete, So... And especially when you have her mom, Sylvia, doing everything she can to be like, oh, no, aliens, they don't exist. It's like, right, she doesn't want Donna to slip up and remember. You would think they would probably explain everything to Rose to be like, yeah, Rose, don't bring up. But it's like, no, because you don't want to take the chance that Rose might have accidentally mentioned something, when she was younger. So there's that element to it. I wondered really quickly about the Rose of it all. I was wondering about the Jason. I was like, was that just her middle name? They were making fun of me. And then it was like, and then like the conversation happened with Sylvia. I was like, oh, I was, because I'd wonder, I was like, is that what's happening here? And it's like, yeah, she's someone that transitioned. So I'm like, interesting. And, Sylvia's like, oh yeah, I still kind of mess up from time to time, which I'm like, yeah, I get it. Because she's also like, oh, like I don't want to say or do the wrong thing. Because am I wrong for calling her beautiful? It's like, no, she is beautiful, mom. Like, and she's like, how lucky am I? They end up having a beautiful child like that, huh, mom? And Sylvia's like, right. Because I interpreted that, and I don't know if that's what Donna meant. I interpreted it as Donna being like, yeah, lucky having like such a beautiful daughter. Isn't that right, mom? Like your beautiful daughter here talking to you. Like I interpret, it felt like that's where she was going with that. But either way, because also the way Donna was saying, like, oh yeah, like, Wilf would always talk about aliens and stuff and little green man. And then one day he just stopped, which understandable. He didn't want Donna to die. So something that was so kind of like core to him and he loved it. He was all, just as Donna was all about it, so was he. And now it's like, oh man, he just stopped one day and she never quite got it. Because their explanation is like, oh yeah, you had a nervous, not, they didn't say nervous breakdown, but they just said she had a breakdown. And yeah, it kind of messed with her memory. Like her memory around that time is fuzzy because of her having a breakdown. Which is also sad too, because the doctor, when he talks about Donna with Shirley, it's like, oh yeah, like she was my best friend in the universe. I love her. He's like, oh, do I say those things now? It's like, oh, haven't always been the best. The doctor's never been the best at always fully expressing how they feel. They always kind of get on the cusp of it, but it feels like they always have that hesitation of taking those steps forward in some capacity. So, but then we've got this other alien species. God, I'm blanking on their names now. I mean, because there's two alien species that kind of land at the same time. There's like these more buggish people, and then there's the Meeps, and the Meep seem like, oh, so cute and adorable. I also had no idea. I'm gonna butcher her last name, but Miriam Margolis. I'm probably butchering her last name. I'm so sorry. I don't think I've ever pronounced her last name, but I had no idea she was voicing the Meep until I saw the end credits. I was like, what? She's voicing the Meep? I was like, that's amazing. Has Catherine Tate or David Tennant, neither one of them have any ties to the Harry Potter franchise, do they? I don't think either one of them does. Maybe they do, and I don't. I don't think so off the top of my head. I was wondering if there's some correlation there. I mean, maybe there's some crossover, like career-wise, that I'm just not aware of. Like, I'm not well versed in all like a lot of British actors and just like a lot of different biography, like, so that's something to keep in mind. But anyway, I'm putting my tangents aside. It's just Miriam being who she is. That's probably all that there really is. There might not be a career connectivity thing of kind of bringing this all together. Just like, oh, like who should we get? Oh, we got Miriam. That's amazing. So maybe that's all there is to it. Either way, tangents and all that aside. But going back to it, Rose meeting the Meep and wanting to take care of it and trying to keep it a secret from her mom. Because she also knows, like, right, my grandmother kind of gets a little weird about alien stuff. Then also my mom's a little, like, always happens to miss all that stuff. So it's just like, right, I'm just going to keep this as a secret. Don't want to freak my mom out or anything. I mean, especially sad, too, because Rose felt a connection with the Meep. It's like, hey, you're different, and I know what it's like to feel different, too. And she's happy to have her life, but it's just, there is some... And now we know, like, she was kind of feeling much like her mom. Was like, yeah, there's just something off. There's something missing. The doctor ends up going to Donna's house, which Sylvia was having none of that. I love that she's like, there's nothing. Don't notice this man. It's like, oh, yeah, there's this skinny man, which I also love. Donna had that line of, yeah, like, that suit works for someone like 35, but after that, it's a no-go, which I was like, hey, he still pulls it off. I was like, was he, because I actually don't know how old he is off the top of my head. I'll have to look into it later. I assume David Tennant's like 50 now, maybe? If not late 40s. So I would assume, like, yeah, he would have probably been like, I don't know if that was more so like, hey, he was 35 when he originally got the role, or was it more like no, he was 35 when he left the role of the Doctor? I don't know. I also do forget, it's like, yeah, because he was the Doctor like, because he popped up during Eleven's run because they met during the 50th year anniversary, right? Yeah, if I remember correctly, because it was him and Clara, but he kind of went back to his point in time because that was the whole thing with the War Doctor and everything of like they just didn't have any memories of this meeting. Only like I think 11 was the one that kept those memories, but the moment he went back to being 10 put back in his time slot, it's like he doesn't remember this, but you know. So wait, I don't remember. Does he? Because that's a difference. It's a different thing of like, oh, meeting a past you. Well, past yous because of that special, but also it's a difference between that and actually having your own old face again. You know, there's a difference there. But either way, but yeah, Sylvia's doing everything possible, like, oh, ignore him. This thing isn't real. Aliens aren't real. Just obviously panicked. It's like, right, you said if she saw your face again. It's like, well, no, it's more specifically if she remembers me, she'll die. So it's like, oh, dude. So it's like, as long as she doesn't remember, it's like, what's your name again? He's like, huh? What? What was that? Yeah, I'm a friend of a friend type of situation. Because I love Sean showing up. It's like, oh, something smells good. Because it's just like the ridiculous scene in front of them. And so the doctor wants to help out the Meep because these creatures, they're called the Wraiths, right? They are after it. It's like, oh, they're after me because of my fur, and it's kind of exotic, and it's like, that's what they want to use me for. So it's a situation where they're being hunted. We've also got some unit agents that were infected with something. So a lot of shooting back and forth. So the doctor ends up helping them escape. I love going up the stairs, also creating kind of like those like force field shields, going through the bricks so they can like go through the attics of these different houses till they could get towards where Sean's car is, and they're able to get inside. But before they leave, the doctor checks the pulse of one of the unit soldiers. Like, cause we saw people getting shot and going down. I'm like, oh, that's always a sad thing. I'm like, oh yeah, there's victims in this, people die. But the doctor's like, that's weird. What's going on there? And so eventually the doctor's like, yeah, like the fact is we either escaped or we got this all wrong. And that, the moment that happened, I was like, wait, are we saying the Meep is evil? Turns out that's the case. I love that the doctor kind of creates a parlay and it's like, all right, explain all this to me, because the car was hit with these lasers, but the car isn't damaged at all. That unit soldier wasn't killed. They were unconscious. And it's like, okay, like their weapons are set to stun, because it turns out the Meep isn't the victim they make themselves out to be. The fact of the matter is they probably were at one point in time a very nice species, but their sun started radiating this, it kind of shut down and started radiating this psychedelic radiation, and it drove them mad, and they became a conquering species. They ended up killing the Galactic Council and kidnapping them and killing them and then eating them. And it's like, oh, and they're here to capture the last one, because the Meep species as a whole is a war species being like, yo, we would rather die than surrender. So this is the last one, their leader. Didn't it say like, oh, I'm Beep the Meep? And it reveals itself and it kills the Wraiths in front of him, which is such a shame. And especially for Rose, where it's just like, oh, I believe this creature, and it turns out it's a liar. And sure, she's blaming herself a little bit of like being duped by this thing. So now it plans on leaving this planet. Luckily, the doctor was like, hey, you have two hearts, I have two hearts. Don't you want to actually understand how it, because having two hearts out there in the universe is not a common thing, which is something that doesn't come up too often. But it's like, hey, one species that has two hearts meeting another. It's like, and the fact is they make a point of that, like lean into that even more at the end of the episode is interesting. I guess I never thought about it too much about physiology, because yes, we know the thing about the doctor is they have, like, you know, Gallifreyans in general have two hearts. It's also interesting too, considering, like, once again, that depends on whether they retcon some stuff. I know some people want them to retcon some stuff about the timeless child thing, but it's like, well, that's a conversation for another day. But I'm perfectly fine with the timeless child stuff. I know it did not work for a good chunk of people. It really worked for me. I really find that interesting, and I want more with that. But we'll see if that, like I said, if that gets retcon. But like I said, that's a conversation for later. So, but it is the thing of like, right, so I guess not too many things out there in the universe have two hearts. I guess it is that rare of a thing, but it could also just be like two species that have two hearts a Gallifreyan, quote unquote Gallifreyan Time Lord, and a Meep. You also have two hearts. Like, don't you want to know why you were brought together? You might have to take us as hostages to keep us alive to figure it out. Just enough to buy them some time to figure things out. But we even had that line from Donna when she's trying to explain, like, figure out who the doctor is, and he's like, "Oh, I'm just a passerby," you know. But there's that conversation of Donna's blaming herself as like, if I had just kept the money, why'd I give it away? We could have been living in Switzerland, anywhere, and it's like you would be safe. Like, not only this situation being what it is, but also they'd be somewhere that probably by living here, you know, when Rose became Rose, it's like you're around people who know who you were before, and that kind of puts you in a situation where you're kind of unsafe. So it's not just the current circumstances. Granted, this universe being what it is, trouble would have found its way to you eventually, sadly. And then also, especially with Donna at the center of it, but also it's just, right, you wouldn't have had to deal with that. And it's like, but why did you give the money away? And she's like, because there's so many people around the world who need it more, who are in terrible situations or in pain. And she, without even realizing, she says, like, I just wanted to be more like him. And it kind of struck the doctor, even in that moment, like, oh, she doesn't know who, but because she would have said Wilf if she was talking about Wilf. So she doesn't know, like I said, she said it without even recognizing what she'd really said. Like, she's aiming for some goal to be like someone. And I'm like, oh, trying to be like the doctor. So. So he kind of feels even guilty, like even without your memories, there's some part of you. It's still there, leaking through to some small extent. Like I said, it's very ethereal to the point she can't quite. It's not tangible. She can reach for it, but it's slipping through her fingertips, type of situation. But the Meeps, like, what was it, Blade Drive, will basically incinerate London, like, because it's going to affect like a 5-mile radius if the Meep is allowed to do what it does, taking off with its Blade Drive. And it's fine with that, because it's like, then I'll be able to reach to the stars, and I'll continue my conquering, and I'll get my revenge on, you know, being the last of its species, which is so interesting too, considering they don't really lean into that either. I mean, once again, it's still a technicality of him being the Doctor, being the last Time Lord. It's like, well, that's a technicality in a lot of facets, just because it's like, well, I guess technically you could be like, well, Donna, but there's also like, well, the whole Time War thing being what it is, them like stuck in perpetual, locked in. Would perpetuity be the right word? Maybe, you know, the Time War situation being what it is, that's where it's like you're technically the last one, you're technically not, you'll never technically be, you're technically the only one that's out and about, I guess, would be the technicality. Not unless they've dealt with that, and I just don't remember. I feel like I remember the Time War situation just being like, right, the Daleks and the Gallifreyan Time Lords just being perpetually locked in combat forever. Like, they're just like locked in a space, time and space type of situation. I don't think they've ever revisited that to change that, have they? Maybe they did, and I just don't remember. Because wasn't that what the whole War Doctor situation in the 50th was kind of covering? I don't. It's been a while, so do forgive me for my ignorance. I don't remember off the top of my head if they've revisited and changed that continuity-wise. But luckily got some assistance from Shirley, who is like, my wheelchair comes with just more than just tranquilizing darts. It comes with missiles. Like, this bad boy is locked and loaded. Luckily, the Doctor goes off to try and figure out the ship situation, but Donna just driven by like, hey, I can't let this guy go on his own. And even Sylvia being like, she called him the Doctor. So it's there. It's seeping through, because he never actually called himself the Doctor ever in front of her, because he was too afraid to unlock any memories. And so now they're locked into that part of Meep's ship, and it's like, right, we've got a limited amount of time till the Blade Drive activates, so we got to shut this down. And the Doctor's trying, and just things aren't working out, and they're divided. And it's like, okay, I'm going to try and work on half this side, but I just can't do it on my own. So the only way to repair this situation is Donna has to remember, Donna has to become Dr. Donna again, and says the keywords needed. And in that moment, she awakens. And I love the first thing out of her mouth is kind of pissed at him, because it's like, because I was trying to be like you so much, you're locking my mind away, made me a softie. I gave away 166 million. Like he's like, oh, shouldn't we be focusing more on this? It's like, I just got my memories back. Allow me to be pissed for a couple seconds and let me vent all this anger towards shutting this shit down. And I love it. It's like, oh, they're in unison, they're doing their things, and it's like, how much time does she have left? She's like, then it'll be the best 55 seconds of my life. And just for the first time in forever, she feels whole again, you know? And all that time finally feels complete, because that it was almost like this phantom limb syndrome of just like it was missing and I could still feel it even though it's not there. And for the first time it's back, but the time is running out for her. And it's just like, obviously it's not what the doctor, he was like, why does it have to be this way? Why were we brought together just for me to be responsible for killing you? And I didn't want that to happen. But then it turns out Donna's just fine because Rose starts doing her doctor thing. Now, before we even got the full explanation, my mind was like, wait, is this a little bit of a River Song situation? Because I was about to say, like, I was like, did some of that pass on to Rose? Which it did. I was like, interesting. And because they explained it, it's like, because Donna had a child, it was still inside of her. It's locked away, but it's still encoded in her. So the moment she had Rose, and the moment Donna awoke into all her Time Lordness, it also awoken in Rose as well. I was like, that's so dope. And that's the only reason why she survived, is because it passed on, like they were sharing it. It was an inheritance, and because of that, not all of it went with Donna. Some of it went to her daughter. So not all of it, like all the Time Lordness and knowledge and stuff is too much for a regular human to handle. At least half of it went to her daughter, so it's not as bad. I was like, that's so interesting. But getting back to the point I was making, I immediately thought it was going to be kind of like a River Song situation. I was like, oh, because it all like I was kind of right. Because if you remember with River's situation, it was because Amy was pregnant on the... I think it was purely because she was on the TARDIS all that time energy ended up making, and stuff coming from the... I don't remember the exact explanation for it, but it was... I think it's all the time energy and stuff that was released from the TARDIS at one point in time, like, affected her baby because she was pregnant at the time, and gave, birth to Melanie Pond, who eventually becomes River Song. And obviously she was more Time Lordish. And I mean, to be fair, it's like, well, I was about to say, it feels like it's an exact it's a very similar circumstance. It's like, to be fair, well, I'm going on this whole thing because I'm connecting a lot of dots in my head. I'm trying to get you, my thought process was like, well, because later on, it's like, well, how do we got to find a way to cure you guys. And it's like, well, unlike you, because you would never let it go. The fact of the matter is, maybe if you were still yourself as a woman, you'd be smart enough to realize this. But, right, we can let it go. It's like, to be fair, it's like most guys probably would never let go of being a Time Lord. So it's like, right, it would never cross your mind to give up this thing that makes you you. It's like, I mean, to them, it's like the knowledge and fulfillment of being whole, but they don't need all that stuff that's inside of them that will kill them, the doctorness of it all. They just let it go. And the reason why I was like connecting dots in my head, I was like, well, I mean, the doctor was saved by River, who gave up all her reincarnation. She gave up all of them to save the doctor. So that's why going forward, she was always just River Song. She could no longer regenerate. This was like her only life. So there was some parallels in that. That's the dots I was connecting in my head. I was like, oh, I guess in a sense, it's not, I guess you could say in some sense, she kind of let it go purposefully. I am curious, like, they just let that out in the world. Like, is that going to become a thread at some point in time of like, oh yeah, all that doctorness, both Rose and Donna release? Could it be something? Because Shirley's just kind of blowing it away, but I was almost like, is that going to trickle on everyone else around them? I was so curious about that. But also the Meep of it all, the Meep wanted to still, I still have my ship, but it's like, nope, gets ejected from the ship and is arrested. And they're kind of honoring the wraiths and the people that have died because of this thing. So, because of the Meep. But the Meep's like, oh, getting sentenced to like 10,000 years. But it's like, oh, I'll escape. But also, like you said, you have two hearts and I have two hearts. What are the chances of that? Like, it is such a rare thing. It's like, my boss will be interested in it. And I love the doctor being like, that's cryptic, and I hate cryptic. I do love that it's like, hey, you can always go for one more adventure, which Donna's like, I'd love to, but I got my family here. And Rose is like, oh, can I see in the inside? And Donna's like, no, 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 no. You're definitely not doing that. I'm not about to have you seduced by this whole time travel, space and time adventure because I got seduced by. I'm not about to have my 50-year-old kid running amok, in space and time. We're not about to have that. I'm not, because the moment you get a look inside, it's going to change your world, and I'm not about to have to deal with that. I also love the detail too about Rose of like, once again, it's always been there. Once again, she finally feels whole, even though she let everything go. She still finally feels whole. She finally feels, she's like, I feel like me. So I love that it wasn't just Donna finally feeling like herself, but it was also her daughter too. And I love the detail of, every little thing, stuffed animal thing that she was making were all the creatures that Donna and the doctor were working on. It's like even the shed she works out of, it's like, it's her version of the TARDIS. It was always there, just leaking through, just like it was for Donna. It was leaking out through Rose in her own ways too. So I was like, I love the serendipity of that, and just like how it all comes together in that capacity. But they wanted to go see Wilf one more time. Because I love that thing of like, oh yeah, sorry about Wilf. Sorry for your loss. It's like, no, he's not dead. He's like basically in a kind of a retirement home type of situation. 94, he can't get up the stairs. And obviously the unit set him up at a place because he's a soldier. And Kate's looking after him. It's like, oh, Wilf's good. And Kate's looking at him. That's brilliant. Brilliant. And wanting to kind of see him one more time. I was like, so I haven't looked into it. Kind of don't want to, because I was kind of under the assumption, I was like, is the actor who played her grandfather gone? Like maybe is after all these years. So I don't know if it's a thing of like, no, he is still alive, and maybe at the end of all these specials we'll see him one more time, or whether it's just a situation because because the doctor's like, oh, I love that man, and it's like, oh, or is that just an in-universe thing to be like, no, he's still alive. I don't know how to take that. It feels, because I kind of want to know, but I kind of don't want to know. I'm weird about death. I'm weird like that. But I like the fact is they wrote that line specifically like that. It could just be a thing of they wanted to kind of keep him alive in universe, not make it sad. But I also, part of me is like, no, it might be a thing of he might actually still, the actor who plays him is still alive, and they just want to be able to like have that reunion between the doctor and him, because that was also the point, like, oh, let's go see Wilf, because if we do, like, he'll be happy to see not only this face again, but also see that Donna remembers everything, but she's okay, because he spent the past 15 years worried about this day ever happening and what it could do to Donna, but seeing that she's okay in the aftermath is like, right, just one little trip, it's like, me and the doctor, which I love that. I was like, that probably not the best thing to say in front of your husband, but he's like, no, you go on, honey. And she's like, most men would be worried about, me, a man, your wife being alone in this like box with a man. And he's like, yeah, but him? And even the doctor looked offended, like, well, what's that supposed to mean? It's like, all right, come on here, spaceman. And we get to see the interior, which I'm curious, are we keeping this interior, or is it just going to be for these specials? And then the moment we go to 15, it'll be different again, because I really, really like this aesthetic. But I was like, that seems like a lot just to keep for 3 specials. So I'd assume, well, 2.25, I guess. But I would assume this would be 15s as well. Like, not unless there's this, but it's like this, but like slightly modified. We'll see. But like the doctor's just like gushing over it. Has a coffee machine now. It's just always the wonderment of, oh man, what's this new TARDIS interior look like? Which is so interesting too, because usually that happens right when the Doctor regenerates. So for it to be, well, usually the Doctor, but it's just like, right, the Doctor had to leave, and it felt serendipitous too, that the moment you're reunited with Donna and everything, that now you come back after everything's kind of concluded, and now it's different. But I think that usually happens anyway, because it's usually at the end of the first episode with the new Doctor that happens, right? I always feel like it's earlier in the episode than it is, but I think it is always at the end of the first episode to some extent. But maybe not. My memory is like, my brain is mush at the time of recording, so I do apologize of my thoughts being a little all over the place when it comes to that. But either way, even Donna has a question of, but why this face? Like, was it just for the sake of saying goodbye? Which I kind of start thinking to some extent, like, this might be the only non-proper goodbye that the Doctor had. I mean, I think he's had a proper goodbye with everyone. Well, they've had a proper goodbye with everyone. Rose, Martha, Amy, Rory. I guess to some, that I still feel like that's kind of a technicality. Clara, I still think is in a technicality. I don't think him and Bill had one. Or when she was with, I mean, she had one with Yaz, Dan, Ryan, and Graham. There was still a proper goodbye in those capacities, I believe. Definitely with the Ryan and Graham and Yaz and Dan. But also, like, the Doctor's never really been too good at goodbyes. It never wanted to. Like, it's hard to say goodbye to, because as long as you don't say goodbye, it's never fully over, and it's hard to say goodbye for the Doctor. The Doctor's never been good at them. But even Donna's like, well, why does it have to be goodbyes? Like, you could have friends. Like, after everything you've been through, like, you can change. Like, just like your face has kind of changed back to this. Like, you can like, hey, hang around me and Rose, go to like some of her plays that she put on. But it's like, but she's actually a terrible actress. She's not really good at it. But I just don't have the heart to tell her. But it's like, yeah, you can like hang around the fam, like, you can have friends now. And I was like, all right, I might give it a try, because the Doctor always moves on and kind of leaves people behind. So, and as we've seen, there is a group of friends who now, people who gather around because of the whole, those who went on adventures with the Doctor. We got that at the end of the in Jodie's last episode as a Doctor. But you're like, yeah, there's still plenty enough time for things to go wrong. I was like, but what's going to go wrong? Oh, cool. Donna ends up spilling coffee and ends up short circuit. It's like, you would expect like something as sophisticated as a TARDIS to be able to handle something as like simple as coffee, but it's like, that's enough to shoot flames into everything. It's going buck wild. And I love Sylvia's on the outside being like, I told you, I knew something was going to go wrong. She didn't want Donna to step foot in there for this exact reason. And lo and behold, she got talked into it, and look what happened. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where all this takes us going forward. I didn't realize this. I remember there were going to be 3 specials. I didn't realize they were going to be back to back like they are. So we are getting literally next week will be the next one, and then the following week after that will be the next one. So they're back to back. And then I think we are still also getting a Christmas special this year as well. So it's like we're getting 4 specials back to back, which is also interesting, because obviously the third one will be the Doctor's final Tennant's final one, I believe, which is interesting because also, if you remember, like the Tennant's final season was like, wasn't it 4 episodes longer than normal, or was it? I could have sworn it was like 4 extra episodes at the end, like, so it was like 4 more episodes leading up to the conclusion, if I remember correctly, but I could be wrong. I thought it was like 4 extra episodes, so I feel like there was almost like a parallel there, but I could be mistaken. Because the Christmas special is supposed to be Shui Gatwa's first episode, and then like the next series won't be until 2025, I believe. So obviously I'm getting way ahead of myself. Let's just kind of enjoy these as they come out, and we'll see and figure out more where things kind of lie when we get there. So I wonder if we're going to get any more with the family, with Donna's family over these next 2 specials, and what these circumstances are going to be. I'm very, very excited to see where these. I'm always excited with more Doctor Who, so I'm excited to see where things are going to take us over these next episodes. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.